morality before the Bible. Do we owe our morality to the Ten Commandments? Were there any laws before the Bible was written? Is it really important for our government to have freedom from religion? And just how important is the First Amendment? These and other questions will be answered next on our live call-in show, the Free Thought Forum. Stay tuned.
Go ahead and start talking, Doug. I don't need the credit.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the August 13th edition of the Free Thought Forum, brought to you by the friendly folks at Pennsylvania Nonbelievers, Inc. Have you ever noticed when you're discussing morality and laws that just about all Christians will state their belief that all our laws and morality are based upon the Ten Commandments? But doesn't it make you wonder, if everything was based on the Ten Commandments, what happened before the Ten Commandments? Was there any morality at all before the Ten Commandments? And how did people act before the Bible as compared to, say, morality before the Bible? Even 100 years ago? Has morality significantly changed since they wrote the Bible or the Torah, like that, between now and what it is? Well, let's look back at some of the early codes way before Jesus or the Bible was ever written. I'm going to let me show you some pictures of some early codes and laws that were written long before Jesus or even the Old Testament, like that. Now, anyone that knows how to pronounce these, if I make a mistake, don't call in and say that's not how it is. The code of Uruguayna. This was a law that was 2,300 years, I call it BJE. That was like BCE, but more realistic. It's like before the Jesus era, because for the majority of the population of the world, like that, Jesus was not accepted as being Christ or the Son of God. To most, Jesus was just a prophet at best. Now in picture 2, we'll show the code of Ur-Nammu. This was a set of laws that were written 2,100 years before Jesus. And it still mentioned gods, but the gods were An and Enlil. Enlil. And, well, you know that superstitions often attribute laws to God. Then we show on picture 3, this is the laws of Ishnanana. And that was 1,930 years before Jesus. But in this one, most penalties were with monetary payments. In picture 4 shows the Codex of Lipit Ishtar, and that was 1,870 years before Jesus. And, you know, it has things like, well, if a man rents an ox and injures the flesh at the nose ring, he shall pay 1/3 of its price. You know, it sounds odd, but there are rules about cattle in the Bible too, like that. Then we come to the Code of Hammurabi. which was attributed to be 1790 years before Jesus. Like the Ten Commandments, it attributes the laws to God. Only in this case, the god is Dragon. You've heard of draconian measures. Well, this is it. Except unlike the Ten Commandments, this codex has 282 laws or commandments. So, to say that there was nothing before the Bible isn't entirely accurate. Now, of course, we then now go on to in more modern times, which is the Torah. The Book of Moses, or the Old Testament, was attributed to be around 900 years before Jesus. Now, of course, it's been edited and revised and rewritten many times up to the modern day. But however, that was like the Hittite thing. Now, these are all the pictures that I've shown here are all old pictures of what's been found in archaeological ruins that have been deciphered and are found to be commandments and local laws and codes that were enacted and enforced by the people of the time. If you let's look into more modern laws. But before we do that, let's just look quickly at a map here that shows where the Jewish population was, at earlier times, about the time that the Torah of the Old Testament was written. As you can see, the Jewish population was pretty much spread out all over the Near and the Middle East. So the laws that were normally handed down were handed down verbally. And it wasn't like the old game where you used to go into a room and one person would tell a story to another person without any other people hearing it, and then that second person had to repeat that story to the third person exactly as he heard it. And then go on to the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth. And if you get up to 10 of the 10th person, the story that they repeat, that they think they are repeating verbatim, is nowhere near the first. However, with the Jewish biblical laws, it was a little bit different. These people, the rabbis and everything, had a system going where they would teach the laws verbally, but they had their students had to repeat it verbatim as they were told it, and they would spend many years learning all these laws and all the scriptures and everything. So even though there's probably some omissions, if you want, some slight changes, I think that you can pretty much figure that the level of accuracy of the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament and all, were pretty accurate. But let's go into more modern laws. We'll kind of skip over the Book of Moses and the Torah of the Old Testament and everything. And let's go into more modern laws. Okay, you know, we have the Magna Carta. Well, that was written to limit the powers of monarchy, and also to some extent to the church, and to grant the common people more power to resist usurped authority. Then we will go on to the First Amendment in our Constitution. Who thought the First Amendment was a good idea for our, quote, Christian nation? Was it the Founding Fathers? Was it Madison? Was it Jefferson? No, not really, not by themselves. It was derived from many states' individual constitution. And at the beginning of our country, everyone was wary of religion and the hold that it had on the population back in, quote, the old country, back in Europe. Religion had a stranglehold on government and on the people. It was a tremendous amount of power. So when people came to the United States, the first thing that they wanted to shed was the power, but they wanted to, the power of religion, but they still wanted to practice their own religion their own way. It goes without saying that both the government and the church try to influence each other to both's detriment. No matter what you believe, whether you are a Christian, I was going to say Christian or Mormon, but Mormons claim to be Christian too. But let's just say whether you, excuse me, Christian or Muslim or any one of the other religions that are in the world today, most of them, they want to be able to introduce their religious views over everyone. They want to convert everyone that they can into their religion. Now, if we go back to the code of Urukagina, back 2,300 years before Jesus was ever thought of, we note how people realized that the separation between church and state was important even 4,000 years ago. I mean, they had to limit the power of the priesthood. Now, were people more moral 4,000 years ago? And did their laws reflect a moral code without the intervention of the God of Abraham in the case of Christianity? One thing that I wonder about is that do laws that people write and supposedly mostly obey reflect the morality of a particular society? If man has recognized the need for ancient laws that enforced morality and laws designed to protect man from himself, does that accepted morality prove that the modern Christian idea that God, the Jehovah, is responsible for what has happened before him. His introduction is the source of all goodness? Well, no, of course not. Man has always known what is right. Now, of course, back in the ancient times, there were some very, very despicable people out there. There were people that, raped and pillaged villages, and, back in the olden times. But if you come right down to it, there's still people today in this modern age that for all intent and purposes will go out and rape and pillage villages, just that we don't hear about them because they're like out in Africa or someplace like that. However, crime has not really decreased since, for thousands of years. Commandments and laws really only protect or only affect the people who are just on the verge of not being good. You see what I'm saying? A truly despicable person, they will do bad no matter what. You look at the criminals that are in jail right now. Probably 70% of them all claim to be Christian. They have tattoos of crosses and crucifixes all over their body. And they will wear the crucifix on a silver chain or a gold chain. Yet they're in prison. They're in prison for breaking the 10 Commandments, for not following the 10 Commandments. So how on earth can these people say or claim that they are Christian? That really is a stretch. And it's surprising to me how easily it is for people to light up their neon halo that they have above their heads and say, look at me, I'm a God-fearing Christian. Well, that expression has always kind of made me wonder. I question it. When someone says, I'm a God-fearing man, or I'm a God-fearing Christian, or I'm a God-fearing Muslim, or whatever religion. Now, if the Bible and the commandments and even Jesus is true, if you think that you are a good person, why would you fear God? I mean, if you truly believe that you are a good person, you're Christ-like, you're doing your best to be good to others, you follow all the 10 Commandments, you shouldn't be fearing God. You should be reveling in the fact. Now, if you look at society today, and we think to ourselves, especially here in the United States, society and our civilization is really, it's going to hell in a handbasket. And I suppose that if you look at the nightly news, that certainly appears to be true. Now, I occasionally will watch the international news of different countries of China, of Greece, and England, and Japan. And what we think are our own problems, our own travails and everything, are not limited to just the United States. Everyone has got similar problems to us. Now, every country has its laws, and every country will try to enforce those laws, but the laws can only be enforced up to a certain extent. You can't police the whole world. If someone does something wrong, do you automatically put them in jail? Now, if you look at the 10 Commandments, and we start to follow, the 10 Commandments, and we will read them, excuse me, out loud. Oh, but wait a minute here. We talk about the 10 Commandments. They say, the first one, I am the Lord thy God that has led you out of slavery and out of Egypt, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. Now, of course, yes, God supposedly led them out of slavery. However, he let them, all these people, wander in the desert for 40 years. So, it went from one suffering to another. But the interesting thing is, he said that he led them out of slavery. Well, it was okay, or should I, it was not okay for someone other than Jews to hold Jews as slaves. But it was perfectly okay for the Jews to have slaves themselves, provided it was not one of their own. So when you get into modern times, we start looking at slavery. We say, well, wait a minute here. Even though our Constitution and our laws outlawed slavery right from the get-go, did we really abolish it? I mean, so much for abolishing slavery and leading people out of slavery. We still have it in our country. But then let's go and revisit the 10 Commandments. Now, we all know that the 10 Commandments, that is supposedly the basis of all our laws in the United States and all of our morality. Yeah. But you've got to ask yourself, what 10 Commandments? What are we talking about here? Oh, is there just one 10 Commandments? Well, no, not really. When Moses threw his little hissy fit, when he came down off the mountain after breaking his butt for 40 days and 40 nights with his little chisel, carving out 10 lousy commandments. I mean, he must have been a slow writer, really. Either that or God was only spoon-feeding the 10 Commandments to him a letter at a time. But when he came down off of the mountain and he discovered all these people that were supposed to be monotheistic and supposed to be worshiping the God of Abraham, worshiping a a statue, a graven image. Like I said, then he threw his hissy fit and threw down the tablets and broke them. Don't you think that this God who'd spent all that time with him at that time might have been a little irritated over that? Yeah. But who am I to say? But there was a promise. Excuse me, let me get a quick drink of my unholy water. But the God did promise that he would give, rewrite, if you would like, the 10 Commandments again. Now, of course, I don't know why the heck Moses didn't just super glue the broken pieces back together and uses the one that he had, but they rewrote what they said, rewrote the 10 Commandments. Yeah. However, if you compare the 10 Commandments from Exodus 34, okay, as compared to in Exodus 20, like that, these are the way that the laws are written. The official 10 Commandments, according to Exodus 34, are, "For thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." Well, okay, that's kind of close. "Thou shalt make thee no molten gods." Yes, statues, that's close too. Then we go is, "The feast of unleavened bread shall thou keep." Fourth, 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In earing time and in the harvest thou shalt rest. Fifth, and thou shalt obey the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Does that sound familiar? Where's all this killing and coveting part that we accept today? "Thrice in the year shall all your men, children, appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel." 7, excuse me, more unholy water. "Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven," like in leavened bread. "Neither shall the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover be left until morning." It has to do it at night. 9, "The first of the first fruits of thy land shall bring unto the house of the Lord thy God." And the 10th commandment, "Thou shalt not seethe a kid in its mother's milk." Oh, excuse me. That means I shouldn't cook a goat in its mother's milk. Oh, excuse me, I guess that the Lord didn't like me reading those, and he's striking me deaf. Now, what we need to ask ourselves is that was the Torah, the Old Testament, necessary in order to establish what was acceptable moral conduct, civil conduct, amongst the populace? Now, even the population was in the process of establishing monotheism, but even before that, even multi-God believers knew what was moral, even by today's standards. I mean, were people acting like, excuse me, animals before the Old Testament? And what about the New Testament? Did it really take someone to read the Bible, what we consider today as the King James Version of the Bible, as the panacea, the root of all laws and morality, to be good? I mean, did it take supposedly some God to tell us that you shouldn't be killing your fellow man? I don't think so. It says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, his house, his Ferrari, or anything else that he's got. But hey, let's face it, coveting is what makes the world go around. I mean, to eliminate coveting like that, our economy would go right down the tubes. It's the fact that people want what they can't have, what they don't have at the time, that makes society what it is. So is it a sin to want to better yourself? Well, yeah, according to the Bible, it is. But the difference is that people had a civil contract amongst themselves. Without the Ten Commandments, without any biblical laws, people set up this contract that would say, hey, I'll tell you what, I don't want you to sleep with my wife, so I'll make you a deal that I won't sleep with your wife if you don't try to sleep with mine. I won't steal your goat if you agree to not sell my sheep. I mean, to steal my sheep. Can you see where I'm going with this? Now, except for the first commandments that talk all about God and God sort of putting a guilt trip on mankind. Hey, you know, I led you out of slavery, so therefore you should be doggone thankful to me. But if we get down to the nitty-gritty of the Ten Commandments, these are all common sense things. And if you go back to all the early laws, like I said, over 2,000 years before the Torah, the Old Testament, was written, all these laws were written down on parchment. They were carved on stone in different languages, in cuneiform, and every other language that you can think of. And they all specified basically the same sentiment. Now, you know, if you look appearing on your screen, here are some of the old ones. That's a picture, I believe, of the early Torah or the Old Testament, some of the pages that have been found, original pages. Now, if we can just go back to the obelisk there of Hammurabi. Now, you look at it, and I know what you're thinking, but back in those days, everything was phallic. You know, they viewed that not as dirty, but or pornographic. They considered anything that was phallic like that as a sign of fertility. Now, if we can go to like little preamble of it. Now, all around that stone are carved all the 282 laws of Hammurabi, long before the laws of the Bible were even thought of. Well, if they took time to write them down, doesn't it make you wonder how we can say that all morality and all our laws come from the Ten Commandments? Well, of course. I mean, it's obvious that people knew right from wrong back from the get-go. So we didn't really need laws to the people that, how can I put it, that criminals would disobey anyway. The people who were trying to be good people, they would follow them anyway. The people that were maybe tempted were still trying to be a good person, but hey, they saw something that they wanted. Hey, you know, they saw a person leave one of their coins on a table and no one was looking. Well, maybe they would go and pick it up. After all, if there's no punishment, what did they have to worry about? However, the laws sort of help tip the scales a little more from questioning it. Maybe I might take that there. I might steal it. But if there was a punishment that's associated with the thing, now you say, well, okay, I'm not really good. I was thinking about it like that, but I'll resist the urge. And that is the good part of laws. They don't make the good people better, and they don't make the truly bad people better. What they do is the people that are on the fence right here that could go one way or another, they help tip them over on the side of goodness, not because of goodness itself, but because people don't want to be punished. Well, I mean, that is understandable. And if you look back in the Bible and in the ancient times, corporal punishment was a big thing. You know, we start talking about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If a person was caught, I won't say shoplifting, but pickpocketing, say, well, in most civilized societies back then, which they consider themselves civilized, they would cut off their fingers, or they'd cut off their right hand. Do you really think that that stopped the truly bad person? No. I mean, experience has shown us that laws only affect the people that are on the verge on the fence, that are going one way or another. Truly bad person will continue to be a truly bad person, and that regardless of how bad that the punishment may be. And the reason for that is that people with a, I could say, criminal mind are actually quite dumb, because they think to themselves they won't get caught. I mean, even today, if we start looking at all the video cameras that are up on the telephone poles, on power lines, you can't shake a stick without you being on camera someplace, showing your face like that. They have identification software that can basically tell who you are, just about almost, you know, more than half of the people in the country. Yet you will still see some kid go into a bank or a 7-Eleven with his face hanging out and saying, stick it up, give me all your money? Is he thinking, oh, you know, even though I'm wearing this silver cross here, the law is never going to catch me, and I will worry about being punished by God at some later time, because I know for a fact, because it says so in the Bible, that all I have to do is just say that I'm sorry before I die, and then I can get away with anything. Now, of course, that is a kind of a mistaken belief, because that's not really what it says. The Bible says, what the Bible says is that you really have to be sorry. Just saying you're sorry as you're on your deathbed doesn't amount to a hill of beans. You have to be sorry. Not sorry that you got caught, and not sorry that you hadn't repented, if you believe in that sort of thing, before your death. But you have to truly be sorry for what you did. And people just go about willy-nilly, especially in the Christian religion, and they think that they can get away with murder and do anything that they want. They have a license to kill, and they have a license to steal, a license to cheat, and a license to do anything, because all they got to do is say, I'm sorry. Now, of course, being a non-believer, I don't believe in that in the least. I don't believe that there's going to be any eternal punishment. I am not afraid of a God that's going to punish me and throw me into eternal fire and torture me for all eternity. And that's a loving God, by the way, and he's probably just going to torture me for my own good. And that, and I don't believe that Jesus is going to be sitting up on the rim of hell and laughing at my torment. I believe when you're dead, you're dead. As a person I used to know said, I'm going no place when I die. Now, I realize that so many people out there say, oh, you're going to have a different story when you die. You're going to be afraid, and you're going to believe. And I say, well, don't really hold your breath on that one. Because there is absolutely no fear of dying in my whole being. Now, yes, there is a fear of dying a painful death, like that. It's the process, a painful process of dying. Well, I kind of fear that. But if I were to just drop dead, boom, right now, and or I was to know that in 10 seconds I would drop dead, I would not be getting down on my knees. I would not be going, oh God, please, 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 please forgive me. I'm just going, okay, here I go. It's been a great ride, like that, but now it's over. Boom, gone. What I do worry about, and what prevents me from being a criminal, as it were, punishment of the law. Not that I would want to go out and kill someone, murder anyone, steal something, but especially murder. I mean, the thought doesn't even come to my mind, me wanting to go out and kill someone. And it makes me wonder how people today can almost glorify that in some of the movies and the TV programs. The more violent, the better. And you know, if you see blood and gore and everything, it's glorified, absolutely glorified. And of course, all the TV programs, they try to heap it on and pile it on. And then we wonder, well, where's all this violence in society coming from? Where's all these school shootings and people that go into you know, malls and supermarket and try to kill all these people? It's because we've generated an atmosphere of violence. Now, you can go on and you can say, hey, I don't believe that video games or violent movies will necessarily cause children to be violent and want to commit violent acts. But, gee whiz, would it hurt anything to maybe cut down on the violence? Maybe it does affect children or susceptible people, even susceptible adults. So what's wrong with just erring on the side of caution? It's like people that say, oh, this global warming, that's a hoax. All these emissions, they're not causing global warming. It's just a natural cycle. But why take a chance? Even if it is, why do you want to add to the pollution of our world? And the same thing goes for violence in our society, the rise of crime. Why do we want to glorify it? Why do we want to promote it? Now, since the first recorded books of the Torah date back to about 900 years before Jesus and reflect some of the same laws and morals recorded over 1,000 years before the Torah or the Old Testament, does it not also follow that the pre-Torah laws were usurped and copied by the original writers of the Old Testament? The only difference is that now, excuse me, they attributed it to their God, Jehovah. The invention of Jehovah is starting to look more of a possibility. And yet, maybe some enterprising Jewish clergy thought that one more monotheistic God would endow them with much more authority than previous ones. I mean, why share with many, many gods like that? Now, especially if these clergy claimed that their God talked to them and only them and cited rules for mankind to follow. That's quite a good gig. Yeah. I mean, how did monotheism change the existing laws from, before monotheism, except how offenders would be punished? A lot of the laws back before the Ten Commandments were strictly, some of them were monetary, some of them were corporal punishments in nature. Oh, excuse me. However, the big change in the monotheistic, from the monotheistic view, was that now you couldn't escape punishment. Okay, there was no real difference between the laws of God and those that man imposed upon himself as a form of civilized social contract. That sort of like a pre-biblical golden rule. Excuse me. The Ten Commandments introduces and demands an obedience to God, and puts a guilt trip on mankind, intimating that he, excuse me, led them out of slavery. Like I said before, of course, it took God 40 years of suffering in the desert in order to do it. I'm not sure that I would want to brag about that. One more drink. The only major difference was heaven and hell, and the claim that man could not escape punishment. Since the omnipotent God of Abraham could punish you even after death, he saw everything you did and thought, sort of like Santa Claus. You know what I mean? Mankind could not escape the wrath of Jehovah, and of course the punishment of Jesus, except that nothing has changed in the last 4,000 years. So much for the claim that we would not have any morality if it were not for the Bible and God. Was our country based on Christianity? Nah, not really. Is our civilization based upon the laws in the Bible? I mean, there's more in the Bible than just the Ten Commandments. But mankind has, like I said, mankind has developed this golden rule. We talk about the Constitution, and we wonder, is the First Amendment really necessary? That doesn't really mean that we need total separation of church and state, or should just politicians remember to pray in their closet and not inflict their personal religious beliefs on anyone except themselves? Yes, it's possible and logical to be good without God, and man has always had morals and has never needed the Bible or any other scripture. Yeah. This just about wraps up of what I have to say on this subject. I would like to remind everyone that we have a lot of meetings of Pennsylvania non-believers, and they are basically all over this neck of the woods, as it were. In Lebanon, our next meeting is August the 14th. Lewisburg, is August the 18th. In Chambersburg, it is August the 20th. Lancaster, it is August the 28th. Our next York meeting is September the 7th. Our York meeting is held down at the Unitarian Church on South George Street, round the back in what they call the carriage house. If you approach the front of the church, go down the little cement steps and go round to the back of the building, you'll see this beautiful building with bow windows around the thing, and that's where we have our monthly meetings. What we discuss is, we don't go in there and we don't bash religion and tell sacrilegious jokes. What we do is we discuss things that are in the news. We discuss the same sort of things that you do, except more, slightly more in a religious context. We look at people in government that try to abuse their power and impose their individual personal beliefs on everyone else, and especially politicians. They want to convert their electorate, and they start spouting off about how good they are, and about Jesus wants this and God wants this, and it is a Christian nation, and come follow me and I will lead you into the path of righteousness. Just elect me. Yeah, and then they get caught, sleeping with someone other than their wife, or they get caught in an airport men's room tapping their foot in the stall, like that. The level of depravity amongst our politicians really makes you wonder just how Christian our nation is. Now, are we talking about Christian on the from the respect of what it says in the Bible that this man called Jesus wanted? Like I said, I never used the word Christ, because in my opinion Jesus, if he existed, was an itinerant preacher that had some pretty good ideas, and if he existed, was probably a very basically good person. But then again, there's been a lot of additional stuff that has been added to him. I'm quite sure that if you read the Bible and all the text that was written in red was not really what Jesus actually said. Well, I mean, let's face it. The people that wrote the Bible didn't start writing the Bible until 80 years before, 80 years after his death. And yet they remember everything verbatim, and they write it down in the Bible. Now, what the people were doing is were writing down good ideas, lessons to be learned. And if you're going to derive anything from the Bible, it's not really that Jesus said this, but the ideas there are they are good ideas from people to the way that people should treat each other. Now, I'd also like to mention too that our atheist community has a convention that is coming up. And if you would like some more information about it, it's should be the information is on our screen. There's a website.